My guest today is Nicole Petrie, Chief Marketing and BD Officer for Schulte Roth Zabel, a private capital law firm based in New York. Prior to joining the firm, she spent 16 years with KPMG in both Australia and the US, focused mostly on sales and BD transformation roles. How did she make the transition from Australia to the US and from accounting to law? Well, let's find out. Welcome to the podcast, Nicole.
Thanks, Graham, and it's terrific to be here.
It's lovely to see you. Now, I don't know if you've listened to these podcasts before, but I always take you right back to the very beginning when you were thinking about going to university and doing those qualifications to get you onto your career path. And you graduated with a degree in commerce, accounting, and Japanese. We're going to have to talk about that. You know that, don't you? Japanese. Yeah, and then later you completed a master's in HR coaching and psychology. So, I mean, looking back, firstly, why Japanese? I'm curious.
Yeah, look, Graham, great question, because Japanese at the time in Australia was a popular combination with the commerce accounting degree. You know, there was a lot of Asian investment coming into Australia, and they felt it would serve people well if they had that combined skill set as they moved through their degree.
So was it language? Like, can you speak Japanese?
I can speak. Parts of my Japanese language are still there. You know, I was fairly proficient. I actually spent a little bit of time in Japan during the time that I was at university, about 2 or 3 months. And I think for anyone studying a language, once you're in the country and you're submerged in it, it just, you know, really brings it to the fore. And I think for me, that was the real turning point about my love of different cultures and languages and really going deep on that. I've continued to kind of practice it throughout my career, but I'd say I probably need a little bit of brushing up to be able to be submerged back into Tokyo again and be able to operate at a business level for sure.
So from the commerce, accounting, Japanese, HR coaching and psychology, looking back, which of those has been the most helpful in your career, do you think?
So I'm going to probably not answer the question the way you want me to answer. I'm going to say they've all served me well. And I thought about this when you just mentioned it, because the accounting degree, albeit I'm not practicing accounting anymore, just having that basis of a business degree just served me well, being able to understand what growth and profitability is and how to drive that in an organization and be able to talk to people around basic business concepts, I think has been incredibly helpful. The Japanese, as I mentioned, was really helpful in opening my eyes and ears and heart to differences and cultures. So that's been really tremendously helpful as I moved into more of my global roles, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. And then my passion, and I guess the passion around coaching and understanding the psychology around how people connect and operate and building relationships really piqued my curiosity. And that's why I went back and studied the Masters of HR and Coaching. And that's definitely something that I think has really propelled me forward as I've dealt not only with building teams, coaching my teams, but also dealing with senior stakeholders and clients. So all three arenas, you know, that skill set has certainly served me well.
Well, we'll certainly go back and talk about that later. But talk to us about your first foray into the world of work. What did you do first?
Well, if we're talking post-university, you know, my first job, which was very exciting, was joining Ernst & Young as a graduate. And that was in Sydney. And I always wanted to work in sort of one of the big corporates. And why? I think it was the glamour of being in an organization that had terrific clients, really smart, intellectually smart and driven people, and just the exposure you had to so many different industries working in a firm like that. You know, I think the other driver was around it being an international firm. And you could hear that I'd had that exposure to studying Japanese and traveling. I'm actually originally from Canada as well. So, you know, I think I've sort of lived in different parts of the world even before I graduated from university. So being back in an international firm was really, really important to me. And it definitely was the opportunity to explore potentially having either a secondment or a transfer to another part of the world again at some part in my career. So that was my sort of first dip in to the world of working.
Was it accounting that you went into?
Yeah, I went into audit, actually.
Oh my goodness.
And that was fascinating, actually, because I had a really diverse range of clients, everything from mining to consumer goods to banking. And again, a great way of kind of, not 100% sure what I really wanted to do when I left university. I was very good at math. I was very good at art. I was very good at languages. And I think sometimes that's the most difficult thing is, which path should I travel down? And I often say to people, don't worry, just follow your passion. And that's sort of, at that stage, that felt like the right next step for me.
So you were really finding yourself at this point. You joined an international firm because you were passionate about being on the global stage, as it were, working for a business that wasn't just predominantly focused on a domestic market. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think why I had that clarity was based on the way I've been brought up. I've got a very diverse family background. My dad's Canadian, my mom's Australian. As I mentioned, we'd lived in 2 different countries by the time I was sort of 10. And so being back in sort of an international firm and being exposed to people and ideas globally, I think was really, really something that I was passionate about exploring.
And were you passionate about math well then? Because you've gone into audit at this point. I mean, it seems quite dry.
It does, but I think it's problem solving. I really enjoyed. I was very, very good at math, and I think one of the other avenues I looked at, interestingly, was architecture, and I was talked out of that by a family friend. So, it's interesting. I think the decisions you make at that early stage, and the people that influence you. But I'm very happy with the way that it turned out, and I think the exposure and the people and the networks that I made from a very early age were really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And you went to KPMG relatively early on in your career, and you were there 16 years. I mean, that's a long period of time to stay with firm and a great tenure, really. What was it about that organization that kept you there for so long?
Yeah, I mean, it is a great firm, and I think it was really simple. 3 things, probably people, the growth opportunities to learn and grow in that firm, and just my own personal alignment to their values and purpose. And if I think about my time there, the first 10 years were with the Australian firm, and then I moved into a global role, which was based in New York, and I was there for the next 6 years. And I think I had a real privilege of working with such a diversity of people, leaders who were passionate and smart about what they were investing their time and energy into, but also great mentors. I had a number of great mentors there that really helped me along my career path. And then equally, I think I changed my role at least 3 times while I was there during that 16 years. So, I started in Australia as a director of business development, which really combined all my skill sets of business and strategy and business development strategy, marketing and coaching. But I then flipped into more of an internal role there, which was building out a center of excellence around business development, which later I was the head of that business development academy. And so that was a really new learning opportunity. I worked with a lot of the professional development team. I worked with change managers. And through that experience, we were able to create a model that was globalized. And really a lot of what we were doing was transformation work, really going a lot deeper and thinking through how do we transform our go-to-market function at KPMG. And that globalization of the model led me to my global role, which was based in New York.
Let's take a deep dive here to think about what we've heard so far. Several things stand out for me about the choices she made in education, her first job, and the people she surrounded herself by. Firstly, her academic qualifications provided her with a strong foundation of business, analytical, and problem-solving skills. Mixed with languages and study abroad to Japan ignited her interest in global business, and her first role at EY, a global business brand, was the launchpad for what has become an international career. I'm also struck by the influence she took from those around her, be it family, friends, or mentors, coaches, and her peer network. She was open and curious about opportunities and, no doubt, used her analytical mathematical problem-solving skills to carefully navigate each step she took. Let's return to the interview to find out how she transitioned into BD and moved to New York. So you started that in Australia, sort of developing and building out the model, which was taken up globally at that point, was it?
Correct. Yeah,
Wow.
we had a new head of global markets, which was global sales and marketing, and she was a very visionary, passionate leader, and had a conversation with me about the model that was rolling through Australia and the opportunity to take that globally. And interestingly, at that time, I was just fallen pregnant, and she was really wonderful to acknowledge that, but sort of say, once you've had your baby and you're ready, why don't you come and join me to roll this out globally and help transform the go-to-market function. And it was really driving consistency across, each of the countries. And so that was sort of a great opportunity again to pivot and add more skills to the skill set and the toolbox, but also open up my mind to how to apply what had been applied in Australia to different cultures, different regions, different leaders.
It was an amazing opportunity to be offered a job in New York to start with when you're sitting in Sydney, but also you're just about to have a baby. I mean, talk me through how do you even cope with that, the opportunity on the one hand and the life change on the other? What was going through your mind at that time?
Why is everything happening at once? That's what went through my mind. And sometimes that's life. You can't plan everything out perfectly. But I think it was, I had been really creating a vision for myself over the years that I still wanted to work globally. I love Australia, and I always will love Australia, but I did want to go out offshore and kind of develop, my international skill set. So that was firmly rooted in my mindset around what I wanted in my career. I met my husband, got married. We were very keen to have a family, and that was obviously another big anchor for me. And both of those things came together. I think I have a very supportive husband who really encouraged me with my career and was willing to pivot with me to take that big plunge. I had, as I mentioned, a tremendous leader who was willing to help me balance that out on the other side. And sometimes you just have to take the plunge and take the risk. And I'm sure looking back, I actually, that's probably one of my proudest moments. I couldn't believe how brave we were to do that. My daughter was 15 months old. So, it can be done. And certainly I encourage people, many people think I need to get all my traveling and all my experiences all done before I have a family. And I think that's, not the case.
No.
It's a lifetime of opportunities, and you have to spread them out.
I totally agree. Talk to me about when you've arrived in the US and you're rolling out this global BD marketing framework. What was the biggest difference? How does the US differ from, say, Australia when it comes to business development and marketing?
Yeah, I think the underpinning principles, Graham, are the same. I just think it's size and sort of the complexity of the cultural differences that I encountered. When we think about the US, it was the Americas from Canada right down through America and South America. So, there's a lot of differences there. And trying to roll things out on scale and be as, nuanced were quite challenging. So we did have to adapt sort of the way in which we were executing on some of the transformation projects that we had. I think when I look back to Australia, it's a very innovative, my perspective, it's a very innovative country. We are, as everyone says, over this side of the pond. We're so far away in Australia. And to some extent, that's true, just from the time difference. And I know when I was designing and developing what I did at KPMG in Australia, sometimes you're just left to get on with it and really think deeply on your own. And I think that sort of serves many Australians well. And we have many innovative, creative people come out of Australia. It's just getting them back there, right?
Yeah. I mean,
back there.
It's interesting.
Boomeranging them back.
Boomerang, because there are a higher percentage of Australians in CMO roles in professional services than you would expect for the size of the population. I mean, when they leave Australia and they go overseas, they generally go all the way. Like it's amazing. And often clients say it's because of their personality, like their can-do attitude, their sort of openness, their sort of innovative style, and hard work ethic. I mean, I'm selling Australians right now, but the proof is in the pudding. So you've made this big leap. You've made several by this point. So let's not forget, you've gone from being an auditor to moving into business development transformation. You've gone then from Australia, Sydney, you've gone to New York, and then you made another jump into legal. You became the Chief Marketing and Business Development Officer for Schulte Roth and Zabel. So what was your motivation for making that move?
Look, I think the motivation was that I'd been kind of working with transformations through my global role at KPMG and working country by country and helping leaders transform their culture. And I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. And I had noticed the legal industry over the years transforming as well, and had many friends that had moved into the legal industry. Also just knew a number of different friends and colleagues who had been in legal their whole career. So I'd spoken to them throughout about what was happening and the differences and similarities between the Big Four and legal. And the more I studied it, the more I realized there could be a great opportunity to join the legal industry and, work on firms that were going through a similar transformation, and supporting leaders once again to transform their cultures. And I think using my skills of strategy and coaching and business development and marketing, they're pretty transferable skills, right? I guess the big step change was really learning about the legal industry. Similarities, yes, professional services firms, partnerships, very, very familiar to me, but certainly a big step change in upskilling in the legal industry. And I've been very fortunate, to have many people that I've met since I've joined, not only within Schulte, but also externally. I've got a great CMO network. So they've really helped me, build my industry knowledge. And hopefully I'm transferring and helping them to build some skill sets around other things that I've learned within the Big Four. And look, I think when I looked at the industry, there are so many fantastic law firms out there, but what really struck me when I was approached by Schulte was it was a firm that had a very clear focus on one industry, which is private capital. They are known as a hedge fund firm previously, and they have expanded to have this focus on private capital and had big plans on sort of transforming their go-to-market strategy. And I think it was the curiosity and also the courage of their leadership to make that step change that really attracted me to the firm. So that was it was definitely the right firm. It felt like the right industry, aligned to what I had already kind of developed in my career path at KPMG.
Hi, I'm Katie Rosser, co-founder of Seldon Rosser, and we are passionate about helping people maximize the return on their own career investment. Visit seldonrosser.com to see a range of career opportunities and access career guides and market information such as salary surveys and articles. Our career goal is to help you get your next great job and make your own big splash in the world of work.
And how do you go about doing a transformation? I mean, for anybody listening who doesn't have the sort of experience that you've had and hasn't had the coaching or the psychology experience, nor worked in a complex global business like KPMG. I mean, a lot of our candidates and clients are facing transformation in their sector. What advice would you give about how do you tackle transformation, both in terms of helping a business transform in its sector, but also helping stakeholders within that business transform their ideology around how they do work?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think transformation means different things to different people. If I look at it just through the area, I mean, whether it's sales and marketing or it's technology or wherever it is, many of these firms have transformations within a full cultural transformation going on, right? And I think it's about being very clear on the vision, and starting at the top, and the firm being clear on the vision and then developing a fairly rigorous strategy around how they want to roll out that transformation and what's important to them, prioritizing, because it can be quite overwhelming for the people within an organization to start going through these changes. And I think you need alignment, with leadership, that they're all on the same page, that they're all up for going through the change. And then just breaking it down, I always look at it through kind of three horizons. What are we trying to achieve in the first horizon, which is more of the immediate, and looking for some quick wins so that people can feel the shift and the change, but at the same time designing for a second and a third horizon, which is really challenging. I always say to people the transformations can take up to 7 to 10 years, and most organizations, that doesn't feel too palatable. They want some immediate. So really looking at it between a 1 to 3 year time frame is helpful, but recognizing that change takes time and it can be difficult.
What are the biggest changes that you've seen working with fee-earning professionals, both mostly at KPMG and EY and then now with Schulte? But in the last sort of 20 years, have you seen a difference in the way in which, or the expectations placed on fee-earning professionals within professional services? And if so, what have you seen?
It's a great question, Graham. I think the industry has changed a lot over the last 20 years, and professionals, whether they're accountants or lawyers or engineers, they've grown up and they've really spent a lot of time focusing on their technical discipline. And we now are in a stage where, it's critical that people have a much broader commercial discipline. So developing out their skill sets around business development and relationship building and networking, and really being able to engage a client and create excellent client experiences is really the differentiator. So that's quite a step change, I think, for professionals. And I know that from being an accountant. When I started in audit at Ernst & Young, I was trained technically all the time. They had a few, courses on being a great manager and stuff, but were they skilling me up to really be a great business developer or a marketer and really, run the business? And I see the same thing in the legal industry. There's the technical side of being a lawyer, but there's the business of law, which is equally important. And when we can get those two lenses and we can connect them and develop people in that way, really, really powerful. And I see that, the lawyers that are focused on both sides of that equation are very successful. And, we talk a lot about rainmakers. And if you kind of peel back the onion and really look at what's going on there, they generally have both of those skill sets. They're able to be technically brilliant, but they're also able to engage a client, understand their agenda, bring them great insights, negotiate well, convert the deal, win the work, and then continue on and continue the relationship. I think the big step change in any of these professional services firms is how they start to institutionalize clients and really work cross-firm to bring the best of all of a firm to a client.
Have you seen the role of the BD person change therefore as well as it's become a lot more sophisticated on the fee earning side? Has it had to become more sophisticated on the BD side?
Yeah, I think business development people are definitely seeing a step change in their skill set. They need to be great advisors and coaches alongside understanding the whole end-to-end sales cycle. And I think you're seeing that that requirement is increasing as we move forward. We hear a lot about people, adding what I did previously in my career, adding the coaching skills, right, to really be great listeners, ask great questions, and really get to the heart of what's kind of standing in the way of a lawyer being as successful as they can, or an accountant being as successful as they can in front of their client. And, I always come back to a very simple model around, what's going on for the person's mindset. Can we get that mindset shift to be a growth mindset? Do they have the right skills, business development skills to be out there? And are they disciplined in the way they're going to market? Because sometimes even the best and the top people, they might have a growth mindset and great BD skills, but they're so busy they fall over there. They just don't get back and repeat and do things that are needed to be done to really delight the client.
I'm going to ask you a question which melds your audit experience and your BD experience together, and it's about return on investment. And I just wonder, do you focus heavily on return on investment because you had an eye for numbers and experience with numbers and experience for investing when you were in your when you were in your accounting audit career? Is that something that you really focus on?
Yeah, it is. And I think in any industry, it's important, right? We need to be able to show the value that we're creating, whether it's around growth or whether it's around the brand reputation or operational efficiency, whatever it is. And having measures that support that and show progress are incredibly important. I think on the flip side, the challenges when you're doing transformation work, a lot of it, there's this balance between short-term ROI and long-term, long-term goals. And it's difficult to get that balance. I think also there's qualitative and quantitative measures around ROI. And I know for the work we're doing currently and working with lawyers, that quantitative and just having really concrete return on investment measures are really important. I think, if we have too much on the qualitative side, it can lead into that skepticism that, what are they really doing? And is that really adding the value, for the firm at this point in time? So in summary, ROI, incredibly important in any sort of marketing and BD sort of work and transformational work.
You said that you did a psychology qualification. You went back to school and did a psychology and HR qualification. Is that really serving you well now in the role that you're doing today?
Absolutely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's two sides to this. I'm really passionate about developing high performance teams, both the team that I'm leading and making sure that I'm giving them everything I can be giving them from a leadership perspective, which is listening very carefully and asking really good questions and developing them and getting them to the place they need to be. And I think the coaching really comes in handy from that perspective. On the flip side, in my current role, I'm working with a number of senior partners and partners throughout the firm. And so being able to coach and work with them to, get them to the next step of where they need to be is important. But also, within our organization and many, I think, law firms and accounting firms, client teams are a big focus. And so being able to go in and coach and work alongside team coaching those groups is incredibly important. So, yeah, I think in summary, coaching is quite simply listening, asking great questions, and that can be whether with your current team, with your internal stakeholders, but also externally with our clients. And that was certainly, in my prior roles where I was client facing, it served me really well in those roles as well.
A lot of these roles, the one that you're doing, they're quite isolated. There's only one CMO generally. Where do you go to get your, I suppose, mentoring or coaching or, checking in with you to make sure that you're on track as a high performer?
Yeah. Look, I think having mentors are incredibly important throughout your career. So I certainly have mentors that have stayed with me for, my lifetime, and then equally building a great network of people like, CMOs at the moment. So in the US, I've managed to build a great group here, but also globally. So I tend to, it's like collecting people as you go. I tend to really make an effort and staying connected to my colleagues that I've had, whether it's at KPMG or Ernst & Young and, all the places that I've traveled. And learning from them and sharing with them has been incredibly important. I am a bit of a nerd. I tend to read a lot about, the industry that I'm in, but also, leadership development and coaching. So, I do my own sort of deep dive studying around these topics that I know are incredibly important for not just my career, but also for the people that I'm serving. And then, continuing to network and stay relevant in the industry.
Do you ever take any time to sort of recognize yourself, how great your career has been and where you've ended up?
You do have to stop, right? You do. It's again, a great question. You do have to stop and acknowledge how far you've come. And, when I think about my days, back in Sydney, before I started at Ernst & Young, and I was living north of Sydney on this small coastal town, it's a big step change to now be across the other side of the pond in New York and working for a fantastic law firm and, at a chief level. So yeah, every now and then, but generally it's when people stop you and bring it to your attention. So it's a great point, Graham. I think celebrating successes along the way, and you don't always get it right. So I also like to look at sometimes things that haven't gone right, because there's a huge learning. I've had some step changes in my career that have been the biggest learning opportunities, whether it's a role that I took or an organization that I went into for a period of time. And they've always been the harder things that have happened in my life, or if you want to call it failures, have been the biggest learning opportunities.
And looking back now to when you were starting your career at Ernst & Young as an auditor, would you give yourself any advice? Yeah,
I think for me, just be more confident. Be more confident and speak up and share your views. I'm so impressed when I see some of my younger colleagues who are starting their careers, and just how brilliant they are and their ideas, and I just think, wow. And you have so many big ideas when you've come out of university in particular. And so just being able to share those, also ask more questions and be curious. I think, and just curiosity and courage together combined. So I think, they would be something that I would say back to my old self. The other area, I've talked a little bit about mentors. I think they're really important, but also sponsorship. So that difference between having a mentor and a sponsor, and quite simply, a mentor helps develop you. A sponsor speaks for you and will open doors for you. So I think those, having a real focus on sponsorship earlier in my career, that would be some advice I'd give myself back in those days.
Do you keep in contact with some of your earlier sponsors?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I cherish the relationships I have with those people. They also reach out. I think it's interesting for them to see, where you've gone and where you are. And but yeah, no, I'm very active with keeping connected to people that have been very kind and invested in me without anything really too much in return.
Well, it's been lovely to hear about your career. It's great to see another Australian flying the flag so brilliantly over there in New York. Thank you so much for your time coming on Deep CV Diving. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks, Graham. It's been terrific, and I've really enjoyed the time having this conversation.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.